Hi, in this presentation, we are still looking at word problems, but here we'll be looking at difference, word problem involving difference. In the previous videos, we have looked at the word problem that involves sum. So in this one, we'll be paying attention to word problems that involves difference. So, but the question is this: what is difference? When you talk about difference between two numbers, it's just the answer you get after the subtraction. For instance, the difference between 5 and 3. You are looking at 5 and 3, so to get the difference is say 5 minus 3, and that gives you 2. So this 2 now is simply what we refer as a difference. Then, when we are dealing with this difference, we usually subtract the small number from the big number. So actually, this 2 is a positive difference. So when we are talking about the difference between two numbers, we're actually looking at the positive difference. Because you know that you can have 3 minus 5, which gives you minus 2. But our interest is always on the positive difference. So when you are talking about the difference between two numbers, you just subtract. You subtract the small number from the big number in order to arrive at a positive difference. So we always talk about the positive difference, less otherwise stated. So we'll look at example now. So here we are told that the difference between 13 and another number is 25. So there are two sentences here. The difference between 13 and another number is 25. Then find the two possible values for the number. So let's see the information we can extract from that two sentences. So supposing we are looking at the first sentence now. Let's see if we can get information now. So we are told that the difference between 13 and another number, that another number we don't know. So we can say, let that number, maybe we call it x, the x for instance, because that number is unknown. So we use letters of alphabet to represent the unknown. So we can call it x. So now we are looking at the difference between 13 and x. Like I told you, you always subtract the small number from the big number. So when you're talking about the difference, we're always talking about the positive difference. But we have a problem here. The question is this: between 13 and x, which one is greater? We don't know. Why? Because we don't know the value of x. So in this case now, we make two assumptions. Or we rather say that two cases will arise. So for instance, we look at, in this situation, we can look at two cases. So let's look at, let's say, case 1. So we suppose that 13. So let's assume that 13 is greater than x. Okay, so if 13 is greater than x, that means we are going to subtract x from 13. So we now have 13 minus x. So here we are going to have subtract x from 13, because 13 is a greater number. So we're going to subtract a small number from a big number. And from the question, we say that this is equals to 25. So this will give us 25. So if this being the case, we now look out for the value of x. So what do we do? The situation is this: you want all this one to be on the left hand side, because that is unknown. So we're going to say subtract. In order to achieve that, we're going to subtract 13 from both sides. Okay, so we subtract 13 from both sides. So if that is done, we are going to have 13 minus 13, because that is on the left hand side. So we still have minus x. Then on the right hand side, we also subtract 13. So that will be 13. 25 minus 13. So at this point, this is gone. 13 minus 13 will vanish. So we'll be left with minus x on the left hand side. So Then on the right hand side we have 25 minus 13, which will simply give us 12. But what are we looking for? We are looking for the unknown x. So our interest is on this x alone. We want to find x. So in order to find x, you have to take away the minus. So you divide both sides by minus 1, here by minus 1. So at this minus, we cancel this minus, this becomes plus. So if that is done, then when minus 1 divides 12, that will give us minus 12. So we have that x is equals to minus 12. So this will be the situation if we are working on case 1. Remember, that's why the question says find the two possible values. So we can have two possible values for that unknown number. So this is one of the value. So this is one of the possible value, 12. So we look at another case. Let's say case 2. Case 2 now, the first case, remember that case 1 we talked about when 13 is greater than x. Now let's talk about when 13 is a smaller value. 13 now becomes a smaller value. 13 is less than x. So now, because 13 is smaller, we are going to subtract a small value from a big value to get the positive difference. So in that case now, that being the case, we have x minus 13. And the difference we are told is 25. So this is 25. So now, you want x to remain here. So for x to remain here, this one will go, minus 13 will go. And how do you do that? You add 13 to both sides. So you add. So in the JS1 or JS2 class, we have talked about solving simple equations like this. So we are familiar with that. Otherwise, you can watch videos on simple equations to know how to handle this. So we can add 13 to both sides. So when we do that, you have x minus 13, then you add the 13. Then on the right hand side, you have 25 plus 13. So here, everything is gone. So we are now left with only x. So here, you have 25 plus 13 will give us 38. So we have x to be equals to 38. So if case 2 holds, that is 13 is less than x, then x becomes equals to 38. So in conclusion, what do we conclude? The two possible values will come from the two cases are, so the first case, we're able to get x to be equals to 12. So the two values will be x equals to 12 or x equals to 38. So we have that two possible, remember that x is minus 12, not plus 12. So we have minus 12 or 38. So these are the two possible values we can have. So these are the two possible values. So you can either have x to be equals to minus 12 or x equals to 38, depending on the case you find yourself.